Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. Washington Post, Biden advisor said he would have received $4 million bonus for 2024 win. Fox News, video surfaces of Biden aide admitting he stood to receive millions for 2024 victory. Hit subscribe. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right now. We're going to discuss this a lot more on H.A. Goodman's other channel after this live stream to my super chat. Thank you so very much. We're going to get to the analysis in 1 second. But Biden aide admits to potential $4 million bonus if former president reelected. New video reveals this will almost certainly make, along with the mental and cognitive issues, almost certainly make the pardons null and void. They're essentially already null and void. The GOP has already asked the Department of Justice to basically tear them up. An aide to former President Joe Biden said he would have received $4 million bonus if Biden had been reelected in 2024. The House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform on Tuesday released a video of Mike Donilon making the confession as he was testifying before the committee in September. Now, every other staffer, every other advisor, every other politician associated with Joe Biden has to either commit perjury or explain why a former aide was promised $4 million. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. They're already, the Republicans, the GOP, Trump GOP has already essentially just requested that the pardons be null and void. Liz Cheney, we talked about this today, is accused by Congressman Loudermilk, Republicans in Congress, and President Trump and others of deleting records. SCHIFF also has been accused by Trump of deleting records. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. To my super chat. Thank you. Let's get started.
Oversight Committee releasing its report on the investigation into former President Biden and his use of the auto pen and the alleged cover-up of his mental decline. The committee says executive action signed via auto pen should be null and void, recommending that the Justice Department look into whether Joe Biden authorized any of it himself. Biden aides Annie Tomasini, Anthony Bernal, and Karine Jean-Pierre all facing heavy scrutiny for their part in this cover-up. Lawmakers also sending a letter to the D.C. Board of Medicine asking to investigate former White House physician Kevin O'Connor. They say this, quote, he facilitated the concealment by presenting incomplete annual exams, neglecting to conduct the cognitive exam warranted, and refusing to communicate transparently about his medical care of the president and the role President Biden's political advisors played in it. Dr. O'Connor's annual medical assessments are incomplete and misleading as they do not include cognitive exams or mention a neurologist visiting the executive mansion 8 times in 8 months between 2023 and 2024 during the Biden presidency. Jean-Pierre aided the cover-up by refusing to answer questions from the press and from the committee about the neurologist's visit. This 91-page report includes more than a dozen transcribed interviews and numerous document requests. Chairman James Comer is calling this one of the biggest political scandals in U.S. history. Let's talk about it. Joining me now is former federal prosecutor Katie Sherkowski. Katie, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Your reaction to this?
Well, it's certainly not surprising that there are remaining significant questions about the legitimacy of any actions taken by President Biden. Now, the use of the auto pen obviously is authorized and has been authorized by the Office of Legal Counsel for some time. But in conjunction with the known cognitive issues that he had, there is a serious question about whether he personally made those decisions or whether there were people acting on his behalf without his consent.
You know, it's interesting to look at Kevin O'Connor and his role here, because I remember looking at that assessment, that medical assessment. I had it on my desk for months. There was absolutely zero mention of any cognitive exam. That's true, based on what Comer told us. There was no mention whatsoever, even as so many people were questioning what's going on with Joe Biden right now, Ashley.
Yeah, no, that's what stuck out to me the most, because and actually this is a question for you, is what can they do legally if this is all true with what he did not do, which was obviously.
People are going to get into perjury traps. What takes place is, in a lie and a cover-up as grandiose as this, where you don't have Comey anymore, you don't have Brennan, you don't have Clapper, you don't have a Justice Department and an entire political mechanism covering up Clinton email scandal with top secret intelligence. Hunter's laptop, 50 intelligence officials said it was Russia. You still had an entire administration cover up the Biden mental decline before he was kicked out. Well, now you have Kash Patel at the FBI, Pam Bondi at the DOJ. We already have 3 people indicted. Brennan's going to be indicted any day now. You have Tulsi Gabbard at ODNI, John Radcliffe at CIA, and you already have potentially a money trail where a person was promised millions of dollars. In the footage, Dylan has asked whether the amount of money he earned for his role in the campaign would have changed based on how far Biden made it to the election. He was also asked if he would have received a bonus if Biden won. Yes, Dylan said while nodding. I believe it would have been $4 million. He added, also noting that money would have been in addition to $4 million he was paid during the campaign. So that's very interesting. But let's continue.
Give half-answered reports and the 8 visits that weren't reported by the neurologist.
Well, it's interesting with a physician because obviously you have certain privileges, but when a physician is certifying publicly inaccurate or misleading information, then that does in fact waive those privileges. That does not exist at that point. So I think the medical board can look into it as far as licensing purposes. And then on the criminal side, whether there is evidence of intent and knowledge to conceal or defraud the American people, that is in fact a legitimate question, which is why I think this is being referred to the Justice Department, which would be the appropriate agency to look into this further.
So we got to look at all the policy that took place during the Biden administration to really understand what is legitimate and what isn't legitimate. I mean, first of all the pardons. Lawrence Simonetti, you have covered this as well. All those pardons, I think the only pardon that Joe Biden actually signed was a pardon of Hunter Biden, his son. The rest of the pardons were by auto pen. Are they even legit?
Well, these are the questions. Who knows? Who knows, right? And it's interesting now, all this time later, we're seeing so many significant people, including the vice president, come out and say, yeah, well, we should have done this. We should have questioned this. And yet they let this man do, or let these people around this man do what they wanted to do with no oversight of it.
A wide open border. President Trump will say it's 20 million illegals who came into the country under Biden's watch. Some people say it's 10 million, and we know what we know. We don't know who got away and those people. So that was one of the major policies that we want to scrutinize here.
Well, yeah, and I was thinking about what he said this weekend about that the country's in its dark days and that people should rise up against President Trump, with what Biden said this weekend. And I'm like, we had 15 to 20 million illegal immigrants coming into this country.
Right. We
had gas prices and grocery prices that were out of control. We had violent crime in these cities that was so bad that we couldn't even, people were afraid. They were moving out of cities because it was so bad. And then also we had men playing in boys sports. I mean, if you talk about dark days, I mean, this is what it is.
Yeah, that's right. And not to mention things like canceling pipelines, Katie. I mean, there were so many policy decisions that at the time we were questioning. Now we know better. He may not have even known what he was doing.
Well, absolutely. And I think with respect to the pardons, I think it's really interesting because not only is the auto pen an issue, but the idea that he issued these unprecedented blanket future and prospective pardons. I don't even know at a base minimum contract level how a person can authorize a pardon for something that they're not even aware of, whether they're cognitively able to understand things or not, because the hypothetical unknown nature, especially with Hunter Biden's pardon, is something that I think does warrant looking into. There's no direct legal precedent that's ever looked into that.
I mean, you make a point. Like, for example, Liz Cheney. I mean, why were there pardons over the January 6th Commission? If your work was all above board, why do you need a pardon? And why did they destroy evidence?
So they're going to go ahead and say, oh, it's because Trump wants retribution. But retribution for what? Everything was supposed to be above board. This is exactly correct. Check this out.
things are not, because the hypothetical unknown nature, especially with Hunter Biden's pardon, is something that I think does warrant looking into. There's no direct legal precedent that's ever looked into that.
I mean, you make a point. Like, for example, Liz Cheney. I mean, why were there pardons over the January 6th commission? If your work was all above board, why do you need a pardon? And why did they destroy evidence? Did they not destroy evidence in terms of what we were looking for, in terms of what that investigation was all about?
Well, that's the big question here. And there's this idea that there's no questioning a presidential pardon. But again, there is not direct legal precedent on point when it comes to these unprecedented blanket pardons that have been issued, especially for things that shouldn't have any sort of concern for folks. But, you know, they're going to say that they're trying to prevent the lawfare on the other side.
Right.
When, of course, it only goes one way from what we can see.
Absolutely.
So preemptive pardons with auto pens signed by a president that was kicked out before the election. There's no precedent for that. Okay, let's continue.
President Biden's use of the auto pen, finding his actions in office were not all his own, and claiming his inner circle went to great lengths to hide the truth about his condition and fitness for office. That story doesn't go away. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Dana Perino.
Morning to you, partner. Good first hour.
That was spectacular.
Flying by.
Never seen anything better.
Right on. In the words of Frank Sinatra.
Some of your best work.
By. Thank you. I appreciate you too as well.
Oh, thanks.
I'm Bill Hemmer. Here we go now. House Republicans on the Oversight Committee set to release a report after a series of interviews with more than a dozen key Biden aides. That committee calling on the DOJ to review all of Biden's executive actions signed by AutoPen and avoid any orders signed without his full knowledge and consent.
And we have brand new video just released as those aides appeared before the committee.
He hand-signed many executive orders, but he did not hand sign all executive orders.
Do you know any of the actual staff who were using the auto pen?
No.
You don't know their names?
No.
His rhetorical skills were not as strong as they had been, and his speeches were less effective, I thought.
I think it's fair to say within a few days after the debate, he was aware of my view that I thought it was prudent to consider getting out of the race.
He said himself he wasn't as good debater as he used to be, or he wasn't speaking as well as he used to. That's something that he said. He actually spoke to.
So for a lot of us, that's the first time we've seen that video.
Yeah, so the question's going to be who was working the auto pen? Okay, this is not rocket science. You heard one of the staffers didn't know which. I think she didn't know who was working the auto pen or which pardons that were signed with the auto pen, which pardons were signed by Biden, or who was around when Biden signed the pardons himself. Hold on, there's so many interesting statements here. Let's just really quickly.
He hand-signed many executive orders, but he did not hand sign all executive orders.
Do you know any of the actual staff who were using the auto pen?
No.
You don't know their names?
No.
His rhetorical skills were not.
How would a top aide not know who was using the auto pen? If she didn't know who's using the auto pen, does this guy know who was using the auto pen? It's not rock. I mean, this isn't like a very difficult question. The Republicans are going to ask everyone, you just heard that, who was using the auto pen? Okay. So
all executive orders.
Do you know any of the actual staff who were using the auto pen?
No.
You don't know their names?
No.
His rhetorical skills were not.
And the lawyer says you don't know their names because some of the people might say I know that person and she knows me. So nobody knows the names of anyone who was working the auto pen. But the auto pen was very important. Where did they store this auto pen? How many auto pens were there?
As strong as they had been, and his speeches were less effective, I thought.
I think it's fair to say within a few days after the debate, he was aware of my view that I thought it was prudent to consider getting out of the race.
He said himself he wasn't as good debater as he used to be, or he wasn't speaking as well as he used to. That's something that he said. He actually spoke to.
So for a lot of us, that's the first time we've seen that video. Aisha Hosni has the follow-up on Capitol Hill with the key takeaways. And Aisha, good morning there.
Good morning to you, Bill and Dana. So the committee is just really dumping all of the information for you at home to watch and see and decide for yourself. But they are saying that the former president was not running the show. And so therefore, his pardons and executive actions made by the auto pen, they are null and void. So take a look at this. This is really the process that the pardons went through when it went through the auto pen. You can see this is like a game of telephone here. It starts off with a staffer who tells former Chief of Staff Jeffrey Zients's aide, Rosa Poe, so not even Jeffrey Zients, but his aide, about the decision from the president. Then Poe calls Zients to inform him of the pardon decision, and then Zients tells Poe to send an email from his personal account to authorizing the auto pen. Then she sends an email approving the auto pen use from Zients's account, signed JZ. Someone in the staff secretary's office would then convey that.
So somebody could literally, or somebody could theoretically call one of the staffers and say the president wants to pardon Elvis, or a bunch of Martians, or anyone. The president wants to pardon anyone in world history, currently living, extraterrestrials, and theoretically, he would have then auto-penned the pardon or signed it himself. This is very bizarre. There's not supposed to be all of this, these degrees of separation between the United States president and the subject or the person he's supposed to pardon.
To someone who would then use the auto pen for pardons. So you see here why there are so many questions. Now, it all comes after the panel dragged in more than a dozen Biden-era officials to Capitol Hill. We saw everyone from Karine Jean-Pierre, Zients, also Jill Biden's alleged work husband. The report alleges that these aides, they all coordinated a cover-up of the president's diminishing faculties. So the president, who just wrapped up chemo for prostate cancer, is responding today through a spokesperson writing this. This investigation into baseless claims has confirmed what has been clear from the start. President Biden made the decisions of his presidency. There was no conspiracy, no cover-up, no wrongdoing. Congressional Republicans should stop focusing on political retribution and instead work.
Did you hear that from the little that we heard of the actual testimony?
To end the government shutdown. Notably here, there were no criminal referrals from this report, but the committee is urging the DOJ bill to review all of the executive actions, all of these pardons that happened via auto pen, and void any of them that were unauthorized. It's quite a web.
Sure enough, and more to come. Aisha, thanks.
There likely won't be criminal referrals until you get some kind of... the information has to lead to either perjury or a wider cover-up, and we're getting there. This is so bizarre. I mean, there will almost certainly be indictments, 18 U.S. Code 371, once this unravels further. We already talked about the millions of dollars paid to one aide, one staffer, or promised to one staffer. Let's continue.
Now responding to the investigations into the auto pen. What's he saying about this?
He's calling these allegations ridiculous. In a statement, he says, in part, let me be clear. I made the decisions during my presidency. I made the decisions about the pardons, executive orders, legislation, and proclamations. Any suggestion that I didn't is ridiculous and false. Biden went further, saying that President Trump ordered this investigation as a distraction from what's inside the big, beautiful bill. He repeated claims that the bill will gut Medicaid and only benefit the ultra-wealthy. Top House officials are also looking for answers. Oversight Chair Jim Comer says Biden's former White House physician, that's Dr. Kevin O'Connor, will be subpoenaed to testify, as will former top Biden staffers Ron Klain and Mike Donnellan.
All right, thanks, Lauren. Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt joins me now. Mr. Senator, what do you make of Biden's response to the auto pen situation?
Well, I can only assume it was signed by an auto pen. There's no way Joe Biden probably put that together. He's not capable of it. So I
That's
just,
tough,
it's just the
Senator.
whole.
That's tough.
Well, tough but fair, I think. Look, no one who watched the last 4 years, especially the last couple years, would believe that Joe Biden was in charge. The question is, who was in charge? And the media allies covered for him. We all know this. They tried to call it cheap fakes when actually you were showing actual video of him wandering off and falling asleep. So he was not mentally competent. The special prosecutor who actually took his deposition, the only reason he didn't charge him is because he wasn't competent to be a witness and to stand trial. That's the truth. So anyway, I think that our investigation that I'll be leading along with Senator Cornyn in a couple of weeks on June 18th, the goal is to get to the bottom of what actually happened, who knew what and when, and who had their finger on the nuclear arsenal.
You're holding those hearings, I think. Is that correct?
That's right.
That's right. That's an important issue. If, God forbid, there was a decision that had to be made, a split second or 1 day or 2 day decision or 1 week, like a Cuban Missile Crisis moment. Well, who would be president at that point if Biden were president? Well, who would have decided? So you had Kennedy and Khrushchev during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Who would be the American president if Biden was in office, speaking to Putin or anyone else? If there was a Cuban Missile Crisis moment, that's really important.
Yep, on June 18th, the Judiciary Committee will meet. We've called for that hearing on June 18th, which is just a couple of weeks away.
So this is not over. You're still pressing to get a... Who was the president of the United States for the last 2 years? You're going to get an answer to that.
Well, the American people deserve to know this. It's sort of a kind of an important thing in our constitutional order that the commander-in-chief is competent. And we ought to know if people were covering that up. And, when there's important decisions to be made, who was deciding it? All the flurry of executive orders and executive actions and pardons that happened at the end. Who was actually doing that stuff? It wasn't Joe Biden. So our goal is to figure out who it was.
Okay, next one, Senator. Trump and Musk are very much...
So this is what compelled George Clooney and others to force Biden out. Check this out.
Because we get the pulse of the people, and it's always interesting to see what you all think. And when it comes to Joe Biden and his cognitive decline, 7 out of 10 say it was apparent even before that disastrous debate. So Fox News polled individuals, and the question was Biden's White House honest and transparent? 68% said no. Only 29% said yes. And then when asked, when did it become clear that Joe Biden was cognitively declining? Was it before or after the debate? 68% said it was before the debate. We all saw it. We were talking about it. And then after the debate, it was 20%.
Yeah.
9% are still in denial.
I'm surprised it's only 7 out of 10 because we had so many examples. In fact, our producers put together a little montage of what the American people saw. And that's why we see these poll numbers. Watch this.
That $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President.
I'm gonna replay that, not to insult the man, because we know that Democrats were holding on to power at all costs. Their only goal at that point was just holding on to political power. Prices increased 21%. There was a largest land invasion in one of the largest in world history, but in generations during Biden's tenure. So they invaded during Biden. Okay, the largest war in Europe in generations, and we can go through all the other scandals as well. It was a terrible presidency. President Trump won at every swing state the popular vote, and he just completely demolished the Democratic Party in 2024. House, Senate, the Democrats might not even get the House back. This is a generational. What Jimmy Carter did to the Democratic Party, Biden likely did even worse. After Jimmy Carter, you had 8 years of Reagan, 4 years of Herbert Walker Bush. I don't know when the next Democrat will become president. But I'm playing this again because the auto pen pardons are linked directly to this right here, okay?
With the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death.
And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
So this is what I find. It drove me nuts that everyone jumped off after the debate, because we've been sitting here on the couch and we've been saying, what was that speech? That made no sense. He doesn't know where he's going. He can't walk up steps. He can't walk down steps. And no other network, nobody was talking about it. Yeah. And now, what do they think now? That the American people were asked, even before the debate, do you think he was out of it? They said yes. So it must be so frustrating to be the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, and MSNBC, and tell you there's nothing to see here, he's fine, and at the same time go, the American people have shut you off, shut you out, and made their own decisions prior to the debate.
And listen, I have filled in as a reporter at the White House. You're in that White House briefing room, and I have such admiration and praise for my colleagues Peter Doocy, Jackie Heinrich.
What about the rest?
What
about the rest?
And the rest are just sneering at you. But it is interesting, Brian, you point out, now people are starting to come out and talk. Chuck Todd had this to say.
I will go to my grave believing that the debate was intentional for that. Anita Dunn and Jen O'Malley Dillon will deny it till they're blue in the face. They knew when the nomination was going to be, and they knew they needed to deal with this with an opportunity to make a change if it was necessary.
Why would you need a change if Biden had won more votes than any candidate in U.S. history? Okay, and people were talking about his cognitive abilities in 2019 and 2020. In 2020, he was barely more lucid. He could barely articulate his thoughts. Maybe a bit better than in 24. But he was still meandering off into Never Never Land while speaking. The whole thing was not just a cover-up of his by his staffers. It was media as well, who were basically working for the Democratic Party. It's unbelievable.
So he's suggesting that the inner circle, Joe Biden's inner circle, did it on purpose to get him out of the race and so that we could all see his decline. It would be exposed. When you watch that soundbite, though, I mean, we all lived through it. We did as a country. But to watch it again, I'm like, how in the world did his inner circle ever think that he could serve another 4 years? He couldn't even speak. He didn't know what he was talking about. I mean, it breaks your heart to watch someone get older and experience that. But on the national stage and to run for president, and Donald Trump's last line, I don't know what you said, and I don't know what you said, and I don't think you do either. That was the line that stole the debate. Everyone walked away like, that's right. Yeah.
Well, it ticked Trump off that people were saying, I didn't win the debate, that he just, he's inept. And he's like, what are you talking about? I sat there and took everything he threw at us, tried to make sense of it. And I think Trump won as much as Joe Biden lost. But here's the one thing. I don't have any proof of it yet. Maybe Jake Tapper does. But it made no sense to have a June debate. It made no sense because Trump was in May on trial. We didn't have conventions until July.
It was the earliest debate ever.
Yeah, no one even knew it. So they said, we are going to forget about the debate foundation or whatever.
So you're saying you agree with Chuck Todd?
I have nothing to go on, but I agree with Chuck Todd. The only thing I kept saying to myself, why does he want it? Because there would be a reason, because they always thought that Trump was not a worthy candidate. Now he's
So this is something frightening and scary. When was Butler, Pennsylvania? When was the first debate? The first debate was in June. I think they were in the process of having Harris usurp Biden. I think they had already removed Biden from the equation, had Harris. President Trump had not nominated J.D. Vance. Nikki Haley had the most delegates in the Republican Party. July 13th was Butler, Pennsylvania. And a firefighter lost his life, and President Trump's life was almost taken. A firefighter lost his life protecting his family, and President Trump's life was almost taken on July 13, 2024. Think about that. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen.
Convicted criminal, they could have got out of it by saying, I'm not going to debate him. I don't think he should be running for office. And we would have just moved on. Yeah. But instead, he demands an early debate. And what the result of that would be is that they have enough time to pick another candidate. The polls were terrible. He was about to get crushed by Trump. He was down by like 15 points. That's why Nancy Pelosi picked up the phone and said, put Donilon on. What poll are you telling Joe that he's even with, that he's within striking distance?
Anita Dunn said they did the debate early because they wanted America to see Donald Trump. They wanted him to receive more scrutiny for his rhetoric and his political agenda.
I don't believe she has lost all credibility. I have nothing on her. And I
agree with Chuck Todd?
I do.
I'm Steve Ducey.
This is the
Senator Corbyn, Senator Schmidt, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning about how the cover-up of President Biden's mental decline endangered America's national security and undermined the Constitution. The U.S. Constitution vests executive power in a single person, the president. At the founding, the president exercised the executive power through only a small group of trusted advisors and personnel. In fact, President Washington had a 4-member cabinet. Today, the president directs.
So this is testimony from the Heritage Foundation's visiting fellow for law and technology policy at the Heritage Foundation.
A Leviathan executive
Theodore Wald.
Branch with 15 cabinet departments and at least 4 million full-time executive branch employees. The executive branch proliferation has a single source of democratic legitimacy, that by order of the U.S. Constitution's Article 2, the president is both elected by the American people and vested with the executive power, all of it. Traditionally, the president takes positive actions and authenticates those actions through his signature. His signature is required for the most significant actions he may undertake: to sign an executive order, to take any action invested in him by the Constitution, as in granting a pardon, and to take the most important action of all, to sign a bill into law. In all these cases, the president's signature is itself the protection of democratic principle. When the president signs, he communicates his assent and endorsement of the action he takes. The auto pen is a device that signs the president's signature to a document. The Oversight Project, of which I am a board member, has discovered that the Biden White House deployed an auto pen to affix President Biden's signature to pardons, prison commutations, executive orders, and presidential proclamations. The Oversight Project's research has found that the Biden White House first deployed the auto pen to affix President Biden's signature to a proclamation on day 5 of his administration, and that there were at least 3 different auto pen signatures in use throughout President Biden's tenure in the White House. In June 2022, the Biden White House began deploying the auto pen to sign clemency warrants and executive orders. Auto pen use skyrocketed from there. We found that of the 51 clemency warrants issued during the Biden presidency, over half, 32 in total, were signed with an auto pen. And these include some of the most controversial acts of clemency of the Biden presidency, including death row commutations and the preemptive pardons of members of the Biden family, Dr. Anthony Fauci, General Mark Milley, and more that were issued in the final days of the Biden presidency. We reviewed President Biden's schedule and his publicly available media and were unable to find any record of President Biden's personally approving these actions, such as a statement issued by the president himself to reporters. In addition, we found that the Biden White House used the auto pen to affix President Biden's signature to clemency warrants and executive orders while the president himself was in Washington, D.C. for at least some of that day, and thus was presumably available to sign important executive actions.
The defense from Biden would be, well, he gave so President Trump could have verbally declassified any of the documents that were said to be classified documents. Even Politico wrote an article on that. They could say, well, Biden verbally told this person or that person. Well, then that person has to go on record and say, yeah, Biden told me. I don't think any of his staffers or anyone around him, any top aide, has stated under oath that he or she was told, that they were told that Biden wanted to pardon Cheney or Schiff or the Unselect Committee or anyone else. So who did Biden speak to? I don't think any of the top officials around Biden or Jill Biden have testified. I'm not sure. I could be wrong. I don't think anyone has testified that they were told by Biden to pardon anyone specific, maybe aside from Hunter.
Finally, we found multiple days where President Biden wet-signed a bill into law, but used an auto pen to issue an executive order or for other important executive actions. The Biden White House's widespread use of an auto pen to affix President Biden's signatures to documents that exercise executive powers belonging solely to the president poses significant constitutional, legal, and practical considerations. Once the president's signature is copied and loaded into the auto pen, the machine can sign documents as the president himself would. To be blunt, by using the auto pen, anyone can sign documents as the president himself. Now, to be clear, I'm not here today to suggest that the auto pen is bad. It's just technology. I'm here today because of questions concerning President Biden's capacity and whether the auto pen was used to usurp presidential power or to conceal the president's decline. As the sitting president's mental acuity declined, potentially to the point of incapacitation, his administration's expansion of the powers of the presidency raises more questions than answers. Any investigation into this matter should focus not only on whether President Biden directed or authorized subordinate staff to take action in certain instances, but whether he had the capacity to do so at all. The 25th Amendment lays out clear procedures for what to do when the president is incapacitated. It was carefully drafted and informed by our nation's history. The Biden administration ignored it all to aggrandize executive power and push the country further in their preferred ideological direction. It is our obligation at this point to get to the bottom of these issues and to ask the important question as to whether or not the auto pen and other devices were used to cover and obscure President Biden's mental decline, undermining our national security and also the Constitution.
Senator Cruz.
So Ted Cruz, this is very interesting. Check this out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Biden administration may go down in history as the most brazen constitutional fraud in American history. A Potemkin presidency fronted by a failing puppet with staffers behind the scenes pulling the strings. This is not political hyperbole. The American people saw it with their own eyes during the June 2024 debate. Numerous times, Biden stood frozen behind the podium, mouth agape, eyes frozen and unblinking. When he did speak, his words were confused and disjointed. I said that night, this is the most consequential presidential debate in history because it will result in one of the two candidates being removed from the ballot. That was exactly right. And following that debate, the Democrats recognized the collapse. They pulled out their knives and took out President Biden like Caesar on the Ides of March. For all of their strutting about, protesting that they support democracy, not a one of them gave a damn about democracy when they pulled Biden off the ballot and dropped Kamala Harris in without a single Democrat primary voter voting for him. And you know what? Not a single Democrat is here today because not a single one of them gives a damn about the fact that they lied to the American people for 4 years. They knew. Every one of them knew that Joe Biden was mentally not competent to do the job. The White House press secretary, she knew when she stood in front of the American people and lied over and over and over again. And they're not here because they can't defend themselves. It wasn't a surprise. For 4 years, the White House hid President Biden from Republican senators. Would not let him meet with us. He served 40 years in this body. We all know him. And they deliberately lied. And by the way, Jake Tapper had a bombshell book exposing the incredible scandal that Biden's mental decline was covered up by Jake Tapper. There's a Yiddish word, chutzpah. And that truly is chutzpah. How dare we lie and cover up what we all knew? Now, I have been asked literally 1,000 times by Texans, who was running the country? And I'm going to give you the most terrifying answer. I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
That's how you get the indictments from this, okay? It's a cover-up. Because it's an email scandal with top secret intel onto transferred illegally onto private service was a cover-up. Hunter Biden's laptop, 51 intelligence officials, cover-up. The auto pen, cover-up. Biden, Bolton, Letitia James, they're indicted. Brennan's going to be indicted soon. Hillary Clinton will eventually be indicted because the dossier, anyone associated with the dossier committed a crime. But you can't funnel a compilation of lies into the U.S. government, then cover it up. You can't allow a president, you wouldn't even allow a CEO of a multinational trillion-dollar organization or corporation to be with to experience the same mental decline as Biden. How could anyone have allowed 4 years of the president of the United States in that mental situation, that decline, that cognitive decline? And when they kicked him out, the question is who not only was running the country, God forbid there was a nuclear standoff, but who did he tell? If he didn't sign the auto pen pardons, then how on earth? Because he could say that he verbally gave the command to pardon Schiff and the Unselect Committee and Liz Cheney, and then there wouldn't be any indictments. But who did he tell? That's the question. Did he tell anyone? Is anyone going to stand up within those top aides and officials and staffers and say, oh yeah, Biden told them to pardon the Select Committee, the January Committee? So we don't know. That's the issue. That's where the indictments take place, because people get caught in perjury traps when everyone's lying.
And not a single Democrat here cares. The most telling proof of Biden's decline came with the signature of the president, the symbol of executive authority that was outsourced to a machine. Mr. Wold, you're a lawyer who served in the White House counsel's office. You understand the gravity of presidential action. Does the president's signature carry legal and constitutional weight under Article 2?
Yes.
Is the act of signing an executive order or signing a law or granting a pardon a delegable duty of the president?
So in that opinion in 2005 from OLC, they said essentially that an auto pen could be used by a subordinate, but the president's determination as to sign the document can never be delegated.
Can that authority be transferred to a staffer or a machine without the president's explicit authorization?
Never.
And if you look at the statistics are stunning. In 2021, President Biden issued 78 executive orders. None were signed with an auto pen. That first year of the presidency, Biden, I suppose, was relatively lucid, and 78 executive orders he signed by hand. The second year, however, we see the auto pen emerge. The first auto pen executive order was issued on July 15th, 2022. After that day, 100% of the executive orders issued in 2022 were signed by an auto pen. In 2023, Biden issued 24 executive orders. 16 were auto penned. In 2024, Biden issued 19. 14 were auto penned. In 2025, Biden issued 14 executive orders. Every single one was auto penned. Mr. Wald, let me ask you as a legal matter, if there's a law that's passed both houses of Congress and it goes to the White House, and a staffer auto pens signing that law without the president's authorization, is that law legally passed and signed into law?
No.
If an executive order is issued and a staffer auto pens it without the president's authorization, is that executive order legally binding?
No.
And if a pardon is issued from the President of the United States and a staffer auto pens it without the president's authorization, is that pardon legally binding?
No.
Under the Biden White House, the ceremonial song, Hail to the Chief, was effectively replaced with Hail to the Pen. And it was an outright assault on democracy. And every reporter covering this ought to ask, why doesn't a Democrat care? We heard about the moral responsibilities of a staffer. How about an elected senator who knows damn well that if we get into a war and Iran is preparing to fire a nuclear weapon at the United States, that the commander-in-chief is busy playing with his Jell-O and is not competent to defend ourselves? And every member of the cabinet, the chief of staff, the press secretary, and the members of Congress who lied about this on a daily basis with the press's complicity, they are all responsible for subverting democracy.
And that's the question. If we faced a nuclear standoff, what top staffer of Biden would help us get through it? Because it wouldn't be Biden. Okay. JFK was told to invade Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Had he done so, that would have been World War III. He was told by a top general, by his advisors. He said no.
Auto pen controversy taking a new turn. Axios is reporting senior Biden officials repeatedly questioned the decision-making behind the former president's questionable pardons and use of the auto pen to sign crucial measures. Maria spoke with House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer on this program last week about the legitimacy of these pardons. Watch.
Are you saying that there is a chance that those documents, whether it's an executive order which hits policy and impacts American people, or whether it's the pardons, are they not legitimate?
I haven't seen anything that would suggest that they were. I think they're in peril right now. These last three witnesses that we're bringing in for transcribed interviews, they better produce some hard evidence to make everyone on the Oversight Committee think that Joe Biden knew exactly what was going on, or else I think that all the pardons and executive orders, especially the ones during the last 4 or 5 months of the Biden administration, I think they're all in peril.
So then it could be that the pardoning of, for example, Dr. Anthony Fauci is not legitimate.
Exactly.
Tired of sifting through jobs that don't feel...
Joining me now is Missouri Congressman Mark Alford. Congressman, according to Pew Research, Biden granted clemency to over 4,000 people. To be clear, 4,245, that is a record. More than any other president in U.S. history. 95% of those were in the final 3.5 months of the presidency, Congressman. And some of these pardons, just to lay this out specifically, Maria mentioned policy decisions. Energy policy is one thing, but one official at the DOJ, this is Liz Oyer, she said, especially when it came to these death row inmates, she was told not to contact the victims' families. Basically, do your job, shut up, and don't complain, is what these DOJ officials are now coming out and saying about this whole thing.
Well, Cheryl, I think this is a great disservice to the victims of these crimes, these heinous acts of violence that were perpetrated on these poor victims. And now the people who committed these crimes go scot-free, basically. This auto pen...
So you have morally superior liberal Democrats in the most despicable manner, some people, not everyone, some people, celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk in the most despicable manner, and yet they defend the clemency of death row inmates. And so it makes no sense. So if you speak in a calm, rational manner and debate people, Charlie Kirk lost his life. His life was taken. He was murdered sitting on a chair. And then the morally superior liberal or progressive says, oh, his words were hate-filled. But he didn't deserve capital punishment. They're against capital punishment. They're against the death penalty. But you still see examples of people of wonderful, morally superior liberals or progressives or leftists celebrating. How could you celebrate the assassination of a man who was sitting down speaking to people while at the same time defending auto pen pardons of the most despicable, diabolical criminals who took the lives of innocent human beings who were on death row for a reason? There's less indignation. I mean, it's just the same people who celebrate the ending of a life of a conservative voice are the same people who are against capital punishment. How does that make sense at all?
Controversy, the auto pen chaos, I think will go down in American history as one of the biggest disservices that the Biden administration perpetrated on the American people and the justice system. It is unconscionable for the President of the United States to basically not know what other people were doing and using an auto pen and using his authority as the chief executive of the United States of America to let people out of prison and to pardon people, including his son, in advance of future prosecution. I think it is shameful, and I applaud Chairman Comer for getting to the bottom of this, and I think you're going to see some big things coming in the next couple of weeks.
And this is why the work of Comer is so important, Chairman Comer, because, it was really, you mentioned that Hunter pardon, that was December 1st of 2024. After that, apparently that's when there was this mass scramble to identify all these other individuals that they could pardon before President Biden left office. And I will say another DOJ official did resign in protest over this at the time. So we're looking for more, obviously, from that committee. I want to ask you about this as well. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has revealed that the Trump administration may declare a national.
So this is only the beginning, ladies and gentlemen. This is huge. Tomorrow, I think we might look at the actual testimony of a bunch of these people. But the $4 million, that's interesting also. This is really interesting. Committee also Biden's exercised presidential authority. The committee also shows that Biden's aides exercised presidential authority and facilitated executive actions without his direct authorization, including misusing the auto pen and failing to properly document decision-making processes. So that's all leading to a perjury trap. This is just, again, the tip of the iceberg. The Russiagate conspiracy statutes will be leveled against a lot of people, including almost certainly Hillary Clinton. Brennan is upcoming, according to reports, for the indictment, Comey, and others. Now you have the auto pen scandal. There are some other scandals as well. There was illegal narcotics in the White House, and we can go on. And, gee, who do you think that belonged to? The Hunter laptop scandal, that was also a cover-up. Anyway, hit subscribe to this channel. This year is going to be from now until November of 26. Hit subscribe to this channel and go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right now.